Hey, this is Dr. Allen. In this lesson, we're going to talk about the social determinants of health in cardiovascular disease article, um, and my general approach to looking at articles as I'm scanning through things in preparation for not, well, I guess in my case, classes, but also in preparation for things like if I wanted to embark on a research project or learn more about a particular subject. So let's go ahead and get started. So here is your article that I chose for you. I chose it for a couple of reasons. Here we see that it has something to do with the social determinants of health, our topic for this week. It talks about cardiovascular disease, which is a pretty big topic, hefty topic, important topic, not only in the US but across the world. It's from a reputable source, the Journal of the American Heart Association, and it's fairly recent, published in December of 2023. Now, as you're looking at this list of authors here, a couple of things I wanted to say. First, the primary author is right here. This person has an MPH. They were responsible for the bulk of the research, the bulk of the write-up. It's kind of the prestigious spot to be the first author in a publication like this. The other folks here are the contributors. You can see they have varying degrees. This person here is an MD, PhD. There's some PhDs here. And then this final author here is traditionally the senior author. So that has the highest rank, if you will, or the person who is has the name recognition in that particular field. The senior author is usually the last one in the group. The other thing to look at is in this particular journal, they link their ORCID information in there. So if you click those little green dots, it'll go to the ORCID website, and that helps to give you a little more idea of the tenacity, the history of the author. It helps to justify them, if you will. It shows other stuff that they've done, and it just adds a little bit more validity to the study itself. If you can kind of see that the authors have published other things and see what they've done before. So this was the senior author. I went ahead and clicked that link. It goes to this site called ORCID. And here are just a couple of things. So that's the person's name. It tells you where they're working at this university in Australia. This is the actual article itself. You can look through other articles that this person has written or been a part of, and you can kind of see here's another article that's related about the social determinants of health, and further information about that. You can see that that was published shortly after the one. That one we're reading is published in December. This one was published about a month later in January of 2024. So let's just say that you are doing you're just looking through PubMed, or you're trying to find some articles for a particular project that you're doing, and you do a search, and then you come up with like 100 different articles, and you're like, oh my goodness, how am I going to get through all of these? Well, what I tend to do is, after looking at the title and saying, oh, that might be good, then I'll go look at the abstract. Now, abstracts are written differently depending on the journal. Some journals will have it just like a big paragraph like this one. Others will have little headers in their abstract. I prefer the ones that have little headers because it helps me get to the bottom line when I'm doing my research reviews. But they usually contain the same thing. In the abstract, they'll have like a little brief introduction. It'll talk about how the research was done. It'll kind of like give you the main point of what they came up with, and that's what I tend to use when I'm looking at articles, just to see what they say. So in this particular article, I just kind of went towards the end of it in this abstract, and so I saw here, okay, the umbrella review has evidence that social determinants of health economic circumstance, early childhood development play a role in cardiovascular disease. I was like, okay, that looks like it's probably going to be relevant. And then I'll go on to the next step. If I looked at that and it had nothing to do with what I was thinking about or what I wanted to do, I would probably just delete that particular article off of my list and move on to the next one. Okay, so the next thing you want to do when you're looking at these articles um, is take a look at the very beginning. So this is the first paragraph of it, and uh, health research articles tend to have a very similar setup, and that's on purpose so that as you're going through these things, it helps you to kind of interpret what they're saying. So generally, the first paragraph has like some background information. It has statistics, and this one here talks about cardiovascular diseases and why it's important to this study. Then it goes on and talks about the social determinants of health. It starts to, you know, define what they are. You know, this is according to the World Health Organization. They are this, that, and the other thing. Um, and then as you move on, it gets down to the last part of the introduction. And that last part of the introduction, typically the very last sentence of it, is where the authors tell you what the purpose of the study was. Um, and it usually has this kind of format, but it says, you know, after it says all of that in the introduction, this is the purpose of the research. Therefore, we aimed to provide the first comprehensive overview of the current evidence in the role of social determinants of health and cardiovascular disease by undertaking an umbrella review. That was the purpose of the article, the purpose of the research. You'll find that statement most of the time at the very, very last sentence of the introduction. And then after that introduction, it gets into the meat of the paper. It'll talk about methods, um, how they did the research. When I'm first looking through articles, I kind of skip that part because I like to see what the bottom line is to see if the paper is worth my investment of my time to actually dig into the methods and the results and that other stuff. In this paper, this is figure one. I actually really liked this because I've not really seen this in research articles. But this is that determinants of health model that we talk about in class. So in this case, the health metric is cardiovascular disease. And it has all of these different determinants: economic circumstance, neighborhood, built environment, so on and so forth. It has whether the determinants are bidirectional or unidirectional. Here's a bidirectional. This one here is unidirectional. Um, and I really enjoyed this. This was a good little map about that. It helps you to kind of get a crux of what it is they're saying in a nice, easy flow. So then, as you're going through the paper, you know, it'll have the results section. These are typically kind of long. I tend to skim through this at the beginning until I get to the point where it talks about the discussion. Because as a busy clinician, I've got lots of things to do. Just kind of show me why this is important. Show me the bottom line, and if I have interest, I can go back and look at the the nitty gritty of the actual research. So when I take a look at this here, it says they usually start off with the primary thing, right? The umbrella review provides a comprehensive overview of the current evidence of the roles, blah, 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 blah. And it said, overall, there was evidence that lower or worse social determinants of health characteristics in the four themes, and they talk about the four themes: economic circumstance, social community context, early childhood development, neighborhood and built environment, were associated with cardiovascular disease and cardiovascular disease mortality, right? So that's kind of the main point. So I look at that and I was like, okay, that's what the authors are trying to get across in this entire paper. Now, after that, you can do one of two things, or maybe three things. You can be skeptical and you say, okay, it says that, but let me take a look at the data. Let me take a look at the methodology. Let me dig into the details and decide for myself whether that's true. You can do that. I don't have time for that. So what I do is I generally trust that the authors were competent. I generally trust that the journal itself had a good peer review process, and that the peer reviewers and the journal editors looked at that, and yeah, they validated that information for me. Um, so I can trust that what they say is correct, um, and use that information as justification as I'm, maybe writing a bigger paper, or um, if I'm teaching a class, let's just say, and I say, well, I could tell you that social determinants of health, um, they impact cardiovascular disease. And then I could pull up this paper and I should say, here, see? And if we really wanted to have a rigorous academic discussion about it, then we can start parsing into the actual data and say, well, yeah, but the evidence is kind of weak, or yeah, but their methodology wasn't very good. And then you can kind of start judging for yourself. Maybe you shouldn't trust that journal after all, if you wanted to. If you had that time, you had the inclination, and you had that kind of that desire to do that. Another part of the article is the strengths and limitations. So as you're, um, you know, rigorously diving into the actual article and assessing whether it's useful or not, um, first take a look at the strengths and limitations. Authors will generally put that in their review because there's no perfect study, there's no perfect outcome. So you kind of go through there and see what the authors thought were the strengths, what the authors thought were the limitations, and that can help guide you as well as you're thinking about assessing the validity of the study. And then I like this one because it has this little section, implications for practice. Not all research articles will have that in there, but this particular one does. Um, and uh, and so this is what they say. There's an urgent need to focus on implementing cost-effective policies to reduce premature mortality attributable to non-communicable disease, and that's the World Health Organization's sustainability goals. And then it goes on and talks about why this article, why this particular piece of research is important for clinical practice. And then at the end of an article, there'll usually be like a little conclusion paragraph or two, and kind of sums it all up. And so at this point, if I'm at the conclusion section, that means the article and the discussion, it kind of perked my interest, and I kind of want to see what the conclusions that they came up with, and whether I want to use that information in a particular project that I'm doing. So anyway, so that's how I typically approach research papers as I'm looking at things, deciding what to use for, say, my class, what I want to do for a research project, um, or um, any other reason why I would want to look at research papers. I hope you found this useful, and we shall see you next time. Take care.